I'll never even think about going up in a tall building again.
Odd situation. I thought I was going to do the film. It was going to come out. I was going to be one of those little action films that just, you know, die hard. You know, die.
And when we were making it, we had no idea that it was going to do so well.
I had no idea. I mean, who knew?
I just knew I had fun writing it. I knew if I had fun writing it, ask any writer. It's the greatest thing on earth.
Who in the hell you been talking to? You won't give us his name.
We were going to let the audience in on the joke.
I think he's a cop.
How do you know that?
A hunch. Things he said. Like being able to spot a phony ID.
Jesus Christ, pal! Give me a fucking bartender for all we know.
This is popcorn, and we know it's popcorn, and we know it's a little silly, and we're having fun, and we'd like you to have fun.
That's how I felt when I was working on Die Hard. It just was fun.
When I got shot,
Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
the audience went crazy. And I thought, well, I guess I did my job all right, you know?
The writing of the picture is amazing. It really is amazing. It's just every single person has a function. And there's nothing extraneous about it. And it's really extraordinary. Everything has a purpose. And as an actor, I wasn't conscious of it, but I mean, Silver was as the producer, certainly.
I don't know what it was, if it was either John McTiernan's sensitivity or the writers or a combination of both Joel Silver and John and Bruce and how they wanted the film to come out as.
Joel never flinched. He just, you know, he knew, I think, that this was going to be something special. He was the guy who put these elements together.
It was groundbreaking in terms of that type of genre.
I know that was the first one in that genre with the comedy and the action and the way we did it.
It was a new architecture as an action picture.
I think Die Hard allowed you to go see an action movie that kind of challenged you to think ahead in it and at the same time just have fun being on the roller coaster.
Somebody did tell me that. I guess the universities now are using that as a template.
I knew that we were making something special because it was like a really refreshing way to action movies. I think, you know, because we really, you know, it became much more flexible. You know, I think that to do that all handheld and all motion is like, that gave a lot of energy, and now a lot of movies do that.
The best news of all is that the movie still strikes a nerve after all these years.
I've said this before, that the secret melody in Die Hard is Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a Shakespearean comedy. You know, it's a festival night on which some strange event happens and all the characters reverse positions. All the good guys become bad guys and the bad guys become good guys, and it all gets all screwed up, you know. And it's what it is in Shakespeare in Midsummer Night's Dream. It's in effect, the world goes crazy for a night, and then in the morning you feel better about the world. And that was my secret melody underneath this.
Bruce plays this part as if he does not know his character is a hero. And Alan Rickman plays his part as if he knows his character is not a bad guy.
And this is kind of a stupid story, but it's the way Die Hard sort of got going. Was I got into a fight one night with my wife, and instead of saying, "I'm sorry," I got in the car and took off. And as I'm heading down the freeway, this huge refrigerator box just comes up and lands in my lane about 150 feet in front of me. And there's no way to get around it, and I have to just kind of go through it. And I just gritted my teeth and slammed into this thing. And it was a big cardboard box, and I just knew it was the end of my life, and it was empty. And the box went to 1,000,000 pieces, and as soon as I could, I pulled over to the side of the road, and I suddenly thought, there's my movie. It's about a 35-year-old guy who didn't say sorry to his wife, and then the building's taken over by terrorists, and the whole movie is about getting to that point where you say to your wife, I screwed up, I'm sorry, you know, let's try again, that sort of thing.
I want you to find my wife. Don't ask me how, by then you'll know how. I want you to tell her something. I want you to tell her that, tell her it took me a while to figure out what a jerk I've been. But she's heard me say I love you 1,000 times. She never heard me say I'm sorry. And I want you to tell her that, Al. I want you to tell her that John said that he was sorry.
In any story like that, if you can at all ground it in that kind of humanity, even an action movie like Die Hard, suddenly you've got a way that everybody sitting there is going to say, I've done that, you know, I should have done that. And then you can kind of relax about the other part, which is the fun part of, you know, killing terrorists and doing stuff like that. So anyway, that's how Die Hard sort of got off the ground like that.
Acting in an action movie is so many people underrated and do not understand the complexities. And you have to tell more emotions, and you have to do not only the physical stuff, that's already very tough that most actors cannot do, but also it's like you have to, you know, portray emotions and quick reactions that your audience has to see in less than a second, you know. In big dramas, you can get shots at 20, 30 seconds. You can take your time to react to an event, but in this case, you have to react instantly, and the audience also has to grasp that. So it's complex, it's difficult. I think it's the most underrated part of an action movie.
It was very, very, very difficult to get used to doing that, because you're acting with an inanimate object, you know, and it's like you had to really put in your mind what the individual that you're talking to but not seeing is going through, and it was a very, very challenging, you know, situation to overcome.
McTiernan really created a great atmosphere for everybody to work in, and you know, there were a lot of technical issues all the time, you know, and Jan de Bont, you know, was constantly rethinking things, and we would block a scene one way, and then suddenly the two of them, John and, you know, McTiernan and Jan, would come up with a better way to do it, and suddenly we would reblock it. But we had a great time. My first scene was at the opening of the movie. I'm trying to pick up Bonnie, you know, that whole Steadicam shot through the thing, and I'm trying to hit on her. And I remember I just felt like I needed to cut loose with this character, because I thought, otherwise there's no point in me doing it, you know. I felt like it wasn't the biggest role in the world, and I just thought, I need to just be a bit of a clown in this movie.
Hart isn't like that at all, actually. All the things he turned that character in was all his. I mean, he was making fun of those people too. He's very sly about that, because he'd only gotten the chance to play, you know, straight ahead, mostly television heroes. So he had enormous fun doing it.
And there's something very liberating about this role, where I could basically, you know, grow a beard and hide behind that, and, you know, be a little bit Jerry Lewis.
John brought a sense of humor to the project that I thought was really important. I mean, there was a lot of latent humor in the script and a lot of tongue-in-cheek kind of humor.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
It was a ride. It became an e-ticket ride, and you enjoyed it because, you know, there were all these sort of safety valves that you could just kind of laugh at, even though the tension was enormous. And I think he got that, you know, better than any other director could have gotten it.
Why did I decide to try to put humor? I didn't find terrorism amusing. I didn't find it entertaining. Never did. I mean, it's certainly much less so now. So I looked for an angle that could make it fun, interesting, which is why we turned it into a robbery. But the idea was robberies are fun. You can even like the robber, you know? You're on both sides. You can be on both sides because a robber is well, he's a clever hero. There are a whole bunch of, you know, French stories going back to the Renaissance or something about the fox. You know, the clever guy who is officially a bad guy, except you can't help but like him. So that was what I wanted to turn the terrorists into.
And when Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. Benefits of a classical education.
If you get the chance to be on both sides, on the sides of the villain and the sides of the good guys, you can compare notes about what they're doing. And the audience is then watching the whole situation. And I had this notion that it was a kind of panorama of people.
But you look at all the roles. I mean, everybody in that movie had a bit of a twinkle. And that's just great casting, you know? Because kind of everybody got the joke.
You can break the code.
You didn't bring me along for my charming personality. Though you could have.
I think that that's what made the movie work as well as it did. Everybody got the joke.
John McTiernan is responsible for a lot of the layers in the story and the development of characters and how the vividness of all the characters, that everybody gets their moment in the sun and they define themselves and they're unforgettable.
I've always tried to work with actors who were professionals, you know, knew how to do their craft, and knew how to analyze a scene and knew how to fulfill the role.
It was fun, and that's, you know, that's the director's task, is to set a tone for actors and a crew to work under, and he did that very well.
He's somebody who realizes that it is not the scale of the action that matters. It's the structure, it's the form of the sequence.
He's very focused, very smart, very, very imaginative, and very loud. You know, when he wants a shot that he wants, you know, he's gonna get his shot, you know.
Okay, here so he can see. Let him see the front of the truck.
Van Nelson.
Go ahead. It's gonna end up right here, Yanni.
Only John can drive somebody that crazy.
Bonnie was, again, this is another thing I can't take any credit for. Bruce suggested her. He had wanted to work with her. And we all said sort of, oh, okay. And it turned out she's a phenomenal actress. She's really good. And she helped with so many things. There was one scene I shot with her, and I had this plan that I came in with, and she just said, don't you think that could be played that way? And I went, oh my God. And I was so embarrassed because she figured out the scene 1,000 times better than I had.
I have a request.
What idiot put you in charge?
You did. When you murdered my boss.
And she was absolutely right. The moment she whispered it to me, I said, oh, I'm such a dumb person, I'm not paying attention. And because she's really smart. And from then on, I listened to Bonnie very carefully.
The circuits that cannot be cut are cut automatically in response to a terrorist incident. You asked for miracles, dear. I give you the FBI.
Alan Rickman's just an easy guy to write for. I mean, he can deliver anything, absolutely anything.
Not many people know how funny he is off camera. They see he's so, you know, sinister and everything when he plays his roles, but he's a very funny guy.
Nice suit.
He sort of set the template for villains for a long time afterwards. A long time afterwards. I think it was pretty tough for people to kind of step up there. You could always look that part, but to have the humor that he had and to deliver some of the lines.
Alan Rickman's death scene, the look on his face is absolutely priceless.
Hans is the protagonist of the story. He actually, he's the one who wants to accomplish something. Bruce is the antagonist. Now, usually you think, oh, well, the pro has to be the hero and the ant has to be the bad guy, right? No, it works the other way. Hans wants to do something. He has a dream, if you will. It's a little twisted, but he has a dream, and Bruce is in the way. So in an architectural sense, the story is backwards from what one would think it would be. I wanted a man who's clearly smart and clearly sensitive, even if it's a twisted sensibility, he's sensitive.
And yet at the same time, he had to do things in the script that were pretty tough. You know, he had to kill somebody in the first 15 minutes to prove to the audience that this is not just going to be something you're going to sit back and enjoy this ride. He's the guy Bruce has got to get through to save his wife, and he was smart and yet incredibly ruthless and tough, and I think it was a perfect piece of casting.
You're nothing but a common thief.
I am an exceptional thief, Mrs. McClane, and since I'm moving up to kidnapping, you should be more polite.
Is the building on fire? No, but it's gonna need a paint job and a shitload of screen doors.
Reggie is, well, just like what he became in the television show afterwards. He's enormously warm. He's a sweet man.
The man is hurting. He is alone, tired, and he hasn't seen diddly squat from anybody down here. Now you're gonna stand there and tell me that he's gonna give a damn about what you do to him if he makes it out of there alive?
So putting him in the middle of the situation and having him be the one person that Bruce trusted and the audience trusted, Reggie was perfect for that.
Reginald did a phenomenal job kind of breathing life into that character.
After the movie came out, I had a lot of police officers come up to me and go, "Good job," and we liked your portrayal of us and everything, and that was kind of flattering to me, so that was really, really the best part of the job.
Don McClane, you still with us?
Yeah. But all things being equal, I'd rather be in Philadelphia.
Bruce was the element that made the deal and made the studio decide that they wanted to make it.
And I remember opening it up and hearing for the first time that Bruce had been cast. And I thought, I remember stopping and thinking, that he's perfect for the part. I mean, it was absolutely perfect for the part.
Joel saw something there. Bruce had this wonderful charm of trying to rise to the occasion. He wasn't constructing the drama. He was rolling with the punches. And that's why the first movie, to me, is a great movie.
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Everything is a cloud!
Welcome to the party, pal!
He was really the glue because he had a kind of self-deprecating panache that made the movie work. And it also set the tone for everybody else.
9 million terrorists in the world, and I gotta kill one with feet smaller than my sister.
If you had cast this movie conventionally, it would have been flat-footed. It would have been just a straight action picture. But because it was, everybody had an eccentricity. All the actors,
Now that it's all over after this incredible ordeal, what are your feelings?
It also had certain resonance. I mean, and that was, I think, in large part credit to John and Bruce deciding that his character, the John McClane character, was a guy who loved his wife and wanted back. And that gave Bruce something to really hold on to.
Here's another thing. I didn't know anything about buildings before Die Hard. The building had to become a character in the movie. What I ended up doing was going over, they were building Fox Plaza at the time, which was the Nakatomi building. And I knocked on the door over there and basically said, I'm writing the script. Fox is going to do this movie, hopefully, and I know nothing about buildings. And the building manager was a guy from the Bronx, and he said, well, come with me. And we went in, and I said, I got a scene where I want to get the guy on top of the elevator. And he said, well, just put him on the elevator. I said, well, I got to get up there. So he showed me from a kid in the Bronx how you get into the elevator shaft, how you get on top of the car, and then took me up, 60 stories, like in these high-speed elevators. You're just going straight up.
I said it's a jungle movie. It's like going through, that's what the building is, it's like the manhunt in the jungle, kind of jumping out. And so we get to go into all the spaces in this building, inside the skin and the public spaces, and see it all.
And once you learn about the intricacies of the building, the other thing he took me to was the top of the air shaft in the dark, and then turned on the lights below so you can see like 45 floors, straight down under your feet. And it doesn't take much to get the juices flowing once you get that sort of inside scoop on what a building is all about like that.
There weren't that many samples of where a building becomes such a big, character.
Most people, if they're seeing this at a multiplex in Iowa, they're like me in North Carolina. They've never been inside of a modern high-rise building like that, and it's kind of fun to kind of figure out how it all works.
But it's always hard when all of a sudden, when you used to film an actor, and then all of a sudden the building is the main actor almost. It's a different thing, It's a different animal you're dealing with.
I wanted the plot to keep clicking. It is just as you feel like you've gotten to the certain point, it takes off in a different direction. And that's much easier to do in a movie like Die Hard, which is in a contained space like a building.
We looked at other buildings, but we very quickly came to the conclusion that, budget-wise, it would be completely impossible to go anywhere else. I mean, there was something downtown that we looked at, but it wasn't as interesting.
When we started, we were under a certain amount of time pressure because Bruce had a window he could work, and we had to work in that time. And they also wanted it as a summer film, so that it had to be finished by May something. And one of the ways we could do that was using the Fox Tower rather than going out and trying to rent an office building from somebody else, and then it wouldn't have been possible if Fox didn't own the building.
We had the real good fortune. I know when John was looking, locations, I said, well, you should just shoot it over there. I mean, I just walked across the street to, Fox Plaza when they were building them. And they had lots of floors, which were still wide open, and he just used it all.
We had to be really careful when you blow certain things up, that the compression and the pressure could really blow up a lot of other things too. So we had to have engineers there all the time, that which side has to be open, what draft they had to create, what wind they had to blow in, so that they would create a balance. Because
Geronimo, motherfucker!
That tower itself has a gigantic shaft down the middle. If you suddenly change that whole balance, you could damage the building.
This was Joel and McTiernan together, really raising hell.
The stage is a writer's and actor's medium. It is not a director's medium. The movies are a director's medium. All movies are in the editing and the lighting.
The lighting in this whole movie was, I think, one of the most difficult ones I've ever done, because we wanted to make it look real, John and I. We wanted to make sure that we built a set that is reminiscent of a real location that we found downtown in the elevator shaft, where we need actually really the whole shaft itself. But that's way too dangerous to film as actors. So we had a set built looking like that set downtown, and it was 3-4 stories high, but it had to look like it was 40 stories high. I was really happy with that. And the hardest part is always where do you put a camera, you know, when he crawls in through that air duct. I mean, that's real size. The camera wouldn't even fit, so I had to keep a really small camera and put it on tiny little wheels, and I was pulling it actually on a rope ahead of him because nothing else would fit there, and it worked really well. And even, you know, when the other guy shoots the holes in the bottom, the light that comes through this tiny little holes is actually the light that lights the holes there. And it was like, and I had to make them, of course, really strong, but you don't see it, how strong it is, but you see the effect of it. It worked really, really cool. The only problem that we really had filming there is, because it's a real neighborhood, you know, there's like people living right next door in the hotel, and not only that, he had just opened a couple of floors on the 6th, 7th, and 8th floor for a lawyer's firm that just had moved in. The rest of the building wasn't ready yet. So each time when we had big explosions, and the scenes have to be lit from inside as well as outside, we had to not only warn the neighborhood, but also, you know, warn the lawyers down below.
I think one of our larger problems was the lawyers. There were a bunch of lawyers upstairs above us, and every time we'd shoot off a gun or something, they'd start complaining. What they really wanted was money, being lawyers. So we got a lot of complaints from them, and we had the time when ultimately we had to get into this thing where we'd call them every time there was going to be a gun shot. You know how many times a gun gets shot in Die Hard?
For the lawyers, it was really funny because, you know, they have clientele come in and suddenly they hear machine guns going by. They were really happy when they saw us leave, because I don't think they got a lot of clients when we were filming there.
There is a story that I'm going to tell you that happened at lunchtime. And we used to shoot all night, so our lunchtime was like 7 o'clock, and we were all in the elevator, me and John McTiernan, Jan de Bon, a couple of other guy painters, and a production line producer, Bo Marks, I believe, was in there. And the elevator got stuck.
We got into the elevator, and I'm relatively claustrophobic, and I'm really like when those elevators are packed with people because everybody wants to go to lunch quickly. And then the elevator got stuck. So we got stuck on the 35th floor or so. And those elevators were not equipped yet with telephones and things like that because they were not working yet, didn't need to be. So they finally found out we were stuck, and we couldn't get out, but the most important was it was getting hot so quickly, and people were kind of freaking out and fainting, and finally the fire department showed up, and it took a really long time, and they went up with another elevator next to it, but there's still a big space in between, and they climbed up from that elevator and put some boards across to ours, opened up the top of our elevator so that we could get out one at a time.
And we were in there for about 2.5 hours before the fire department could get another elevator up next to us, and so we could climb out and climb over and get down. And Joel wanted to blow the whole just cut the lines and blow a hole in the wall and cut the lines and get him out of there, you know. But that was a funny thing that happened on that movie. That was amazing. And we had another incident happen when Ronald Reagan came to the Century Plaza for some sort of a thing, and our guys are out there doing this where the armored cars are coming in. They all got Uzis and everything, and nobody ever thought about it. They had all these Secret Service and FBI guys coming and attacking our extras. I mean, it was they forgot to do the liaison, you know, to tell them we're shooting these guys. These guys are not real. Those are fake, you know.
What I think what is the most inspiring is that you learn how to come up with solutions, because there's so many problems on a daily basis, and you know how you never, you know, for instance, you film in a floor that's empty and it has some lights, but that where do you put the crew? And how come you're not going to see the whole crew in every window, because every window is reflected? So you have to figure out how to deal with that nonstop.
I just used a camera to make the action more intense. That's all. It was just trying to again, put the audience in the situation, give them a sense they were in the situation, so that then they get surprised like the hero gets surprised, or that they experience the sense of exhilaration or scariness or whatever.
I use multiple cameras in this particular movie because most of the effects you could only do once. You know, you cannot keep blowing out those windows one after. So there's like, we had a minimum of 5 cameras, and there's one scene in the movie which I'm kind of proud of in a way, is where we had 26 or 7 cameras right over the height of the light bulbs. That's basically 30 feet high, which was fantastic for us. But then, so I had to light basically 4 city blocks and then right over the fountain in front of the Century Plaza Hotel, and they just barely went over the top of the waterfall. But then, everything was lit at the same time. The whole building had to be lit. The top of the building had to be lit, because there were also, you had the two picture cameras with cameras, but you also had a film camera as well, a film helicopter that filmed the 2 helicopters, and then would see them at the same time as they reached the top, and to organize that and get it all done in you know, preparation. I think it took like a full day to prep it, but then shoot it all in 2 hours. That was pretty amazing.
The original novel took place over not just an evening, but it ended at noon the next day. And I think John was one of the first people to say, it's too long for a movie. We can't sustain the audience for that period of time. I don't know how to cut it to make it stretch it out like that. And so in the second draft, the first thing I did was compact it into one night. Starts about, you know, just as the sun's going down in LA, and it ends when the sun comes up the next morning.
So the schedule was so that we could start with a sunset shot, do all night, and then add a sunrise shot, which was horrible long hours for everybody and exhausting.
Because of the pressure of starting very late in the year and having to have the movie out, for instance, we wound up shooting Christmas Eve in the middle of the night in this really cold concrete parking garage.
Most of the movie was shot in the winter, in a very cold winter, because we needed long nights, which was kind of a miserable situation for the crew, because, of course, none of those floors were heated yet at the time, and everybody's huddled and cuddled like in a big heavy-duty winter closet.
The song, Let It Snow, at the end of the movie.
I had this notion about using, I wanted to do the thing that's in the Ninth Symphony, the chorale at the end.
Ode to Joy worked for the opening of the safe and all that stuff. It worked fabulous. I mean, it made it feel, I mean, if you saw the set and you saw it without any music and anything, it looked very bland, but you put Ode to Joy behind it with all the sound of the opening of the safe, and it made it feel like this massive sequence.
Kubrick used it in Clockwork Orange. You know, Alex is always saying the lovely, lovely Ludwig von in his Cockney accent. And it's about a joyful bad guy. That's the way it's used in that movie, and the music I always associated it with that sort of character. And about 2/3 of the way through the movie, somebody said, you know, that's the Ode to Joy. And I didn't know it, but it was like so right on.
It's just a feeling that you have when you put a scene together or a sequence.
And I've just been astonished at times what your brain comes up with when you think you're not thinking, when you don't know what you're thinking about, but it'll turn around and it'll make enormous sense if you can trust that sense.
But, you know, that's what's interesting about how movies get made, you know. It's an inexact science which becomes a soup, and everything kind of comes together, or it doesn't, and sometimes things that you think will never work are what make things work, and vice versa.
I know this from making movies. When you sit in the dark, you know, with your editor day after day, and you think you've got all the pieces put together, and then you see it with an audience, it just seems to come alive.
The things that you really learn from it is that try to really put the audience into the feeling that the character goes through, and don't necessarily only go out to making beautiful images. No, make it as chaotic as paranoid, whatever it is, and schizo. I mean, like especially if you're claustrophobic, make it feel like that, and you know, and make it that kind of nervous energy what he has, and you know, when you have to walk through glass and all that stuff, make it feel like that. Make it, you know, make it as real as possible.
An audience has a place, needs to have a place to stand in a story, or else they're just, you know, they're back here and they're not involved.
When you're writing it and you feel like, you know, the characters have their own life, it's a phenomenal rush. From a writing standpoint, ask any writer. It's the greatest thing on earth.
But I don't think anybody ever suspected that the movie would turn out as well as it did.
And everybody that was associated with Die Hard was at the top of their game. And the sets look phenomenal. The music's great. You know, the casting was super. The acting was fun. And, you know, it was just a great experience to start your career with.
The greatest compliment I ever got on this film was all the people that came up to me and said, I really thought Bruce was going to die.
I feel like I'm a walking icon. I feel like I'm a walking blueprint or something, you know. Because people always point out what they liked about that movie and what 20 years later, it still affects people in such a way, whereas that's what it is to be in a classic, I guess. You know, that's what it's like to make a classic.
I think it's a film that's going to live because it's satisfying. You know, it's a good story. It's a great ride. It's got depth and heart, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun.
I never really got a chance to thank Bruce Willis for being so giving on the set. He made a young actor feel very, very at home, and I never got a chance to thank him for that. And that's really from my heart. I never did, because, you know, we don't see each other much, you know. But I wanted to say thank you to him for being so giving and so kind to me. That helped it a lot, you know. So thank you, Bruce, wherever you are.
John McTiernan was great with me. Joel is still great with me. And I've been a very lucky guy.
I think it's an amazing adventure. You know, it's really quite fantastic to be able to work on a movie like that.
A producer, you know, watching the rushes suddenly has a great idea. You know, directors have great ideas. You know, it's a wonderful collaborative medium, and I'm just glad to have been a part of the whole thing.
I think you only get really one chance, or you know, very few chances to really make a mark or make a major, you know, impact in this business. And gee, I'm so thankful that at least I had the opportunity to be in one of them, you know.
It was a great time, you know. It was a good dance.
It's very flattering to me to have people, you know, mining my work and using it. It makes me feel like I made a contribution to an ongoing work, you know. The fact that somebody may copy it is the greatest compliment.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.